Hey everybody, and welcome to the December 2023 Instructor Community Call. My name, as always, is Kyle Rosenthal. I am a Microsoft Certified Trainer as well as an account executive here at Skillable. My contact details are on there if you do want to reach out. We do have a few people that have joined us today live, which is great. And we have Jorg, welcome from Germany. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Ricardo is joining us from Portugal. Hassan is from Pakistan. Excellent. We do have Armando who's just put us on a hold, so that's perfect timing. And we do have a guest, another guest from Australia this month. So therefore, I'm not feeling lonely at this in this corner of the world. If you do want to join us at some point in the future, keep an eye out for the if you want to join live, keep an eye out for the invites when they start coming through. Apart from that, if you are on any of the socials, then don't forget to tag us in the social medias. So we are on Twitter or X, and at Skillable, LinkedIn, Skillable, Facebook, Skillable, and Instagram's at Skillable Labs. You'll find us there. So if you do put something into there, and tag us that you're in, that kind of gets a bit more of a word out that we're actually doing these things as well. So therefore, we're going to get a few more instructors come through. So, but yeah, welcome for those that are joining us live. If you're listening to this as a recording, then perhaps we'll see you in another one in the future. I can't believe that it is already December and we're almost at the end of the year. So this year has been a very crazy year. So, all right, but here we are. All right, so the usual sort of agenda for if you've joined us in the past, you know sort of how this kind of comes through. We've got a brief little welcome, some updates around sort of some of the Microsoft courses and that sort of thing, so you know sort of what's coming, what's going out if we've got some retiring. We do have a guest today. We've got Mark O'Shea, a friend of mine who is also a long-term MCT. Who we've got joining. We'll have a chat with him about a few topics. He has a really useful resource site that you can use to refer your students to, particularly if they're doing certification. And also he is involved with running a user group here in Australia. So that's the reason I brought him in was to kind of have a chat around both of those items. So we'll get to him shortly. He was threatening earlier that because I was slightly late for our early morning join, for our pre, and that was because I was dealing with getting a 3-year-old up and running. And he was threatening to come and throw some rocks at my window to wake me up, which would have been interesting since he is about 1,000 kilometers from me. So nice try, Mark. Then we go into our instructor recognition, and we've also got a bit of a chit chat at the end. We should have some time for some questions at the end, or if there's any topics and that's something you want to raise as well. Anything that you just want to kind of get off your chest. That's a really good opportunity to be able to do it then. So without any further ado, let's move on. All right, so we do have some more of the Waypoint community courses that have been added in as recently published mock courses. So in particular, the Microsoft 365 admin course, as well as the Introduction to SQL Databases, really popular courses that have been added in. And then there's also some on-prem content. So the Windows Server admin, installation, storage, compute with Windows Server, networking, identity, and Windows Server Essentials. So they're now available directly through either the marketplace if you are a marketplace customer, or alternatively can be scheduled. Your ops manager can be scheduling that via the marketplace. Via the TMS if you are a TMS customer. But it's good to see that we're getting a little bit more of those on-prem content courses and that sort of thing come through from the community, and the Waypoint ones are, you know, have been good quality courses and that sort of thing as well. Just bear in mind that because it's now kind of split apart, right, that there is the lab environment is what we can supply, but the for any of the community courses, the courseware needs to be sourced from the courseware company. So just bear that in mind. Like, we can certainly guide you in the right direction, but there is those two portions to that transaction. Whereas previously we used to sort of have that, you know, or used to be in one in the Avato marketplace. Now it is definitely sort of it's split apart. So just bear that in mind. In addition, and this we did mention this last month, but I just wanted to kind of to just reiterate, because obviously some of these have not necessarily happened as yet. All right, so first off, for MS100 and MS101, there is that replacement course of the MS102, so the consolidated single course. For MD100, MD101, there's the MD102 as a replacement. In addition to that, we did have we mentioned some of the courseware retirements that are coming up at the end of this month. So that's the MS203 and MS600. So if you are looking to have any courses scheduled that use any of that content, that's something, just bear in mind the retirement schedule that goes along with that. So yeah, that's it. It's kind of a bit of a quiet month this month compared to last month with regards to courseware updates from Microsoft. So yeah, but good that there is some more of those have been like more of the Waypoint courses are out there. Plus, I'm not sure if anyone has anyone had a chance to run the MS102 or the MD102 as yet, and just how you found that to go. All right, here we have, and I realized I didn't actually change the subtext of the lower third. Like when I was doing the update, Mark, you are not the delivery operations coordinator for Skillable, and I apologize.
I really wanted you to call me by Doc. They'd be my new initials.
Doc.
Doc.
So Mark, why don't you actually tell us what you are, and then I will make sure we update that.
Yeah. Okay. So currently a Microsoft certified trainer and Microsoft MVP. And prior to that, I worked at Microsoft for 20 years. So I've got a very, very long history with Microsoft. So when people ask, why don't I train on other topics or, for other vendors, and it's like, why would I? It's not something that I've ever been exposed to. I would not be the right person to be running like an AWS or Google course or something like that. So quite focused. And so these days it's, like I try to sort of keep mostly with training activities to keep me busiest. I think I prefer this structure of training, which is that it's, as long as you're doing the work in advance, your training days should be somewhat predictable, as
right.
opposed to, other lines of work such as consulting, etc., where, maybe people think it's okay to call you at 10 at night with what they perceive to be something you need to know about, which may or may not be accurate. So for me, this is just something that, that I enjoy doing. And it is sort of, because of, products are constantly evolving, this just really keeps me on my toes. So I like the challenge of trying to stay somewhat up to date in certain technologies. There are all my little disclaimers and filters.
Yeah, we've discussed in the past, on when we've done these sessions before in the past, that and actually another podcast that I run with Brian Bork, who's ex-Skillable, with the idea of like sort of keeping up with technology and changes and that sort of thing, and the fact that one of the reasons why I suspect it's probably the same for you, like sort of like that I enjoy training. It is a static ish target, right? Like it's not the constant, like something new every day. Like there is certainly changes in what we do, like particularly now with the cloud, right? But you vaguely know what the topics are you're going to be doing that day, along that sort of lines. There will be things that change. The thing that I enjoy about doing training is that it's the challenge comes from the students and from what they bring to the table, right? Where they go, oh, not necessarily that they have this new thing I now want to do blah today, because you still got to keep it within the realms of the topic, but it's a matter of they might ask things in a different fashion. They might have a different perspective on whatever that topic is. That's all the sort of thing that they bring to the table, that makes it a different day. Like that. But you sort of you roughly know where the guardrails are for the day.
Yeah, and I think it's when you sort of look at some of the changes that have happened, especially around students, I think they are probably the biggest difference in terms of what we have to sort of not that we can plan for it, but the unexpected things we should expect during training. And I think the last few years especially, there's been a bit of an acceleration in terms of what who or what the target audience is, the purpose that they're doing their certifications, things like that. Whereas going back to when I and probably you started doing certifications, it was probably quite focused on here are in a lot of cases it might have just even been personal interest. These are things I'm interested in, I want to keep learning. Whereas these days there are very different factors involved sometimes. And it took me a while to realize that the view that I had was increasingly wrong for more and more people, which was the very product or technology centric approach. Versus today, there are some people, when you ask them, why are you getting a certification, their response might be to get certified. And then it's like, why are you getting certified? Because my employer requires it. So you end up with very different attitudes towards learning, the certification process, etc.
I think that that's something that certainly has been evolving. There's always been a little bit of that, of like I'm on this course because I have to, because I've been told I have to do it, sort of thing. I think the folks, like I don't know, I used to also have a fairly high percentage back in the day of people who had no intent of doing an exam. Like they were coming for the knowledge rather than for the certification. The certification was you'd ask a group of 10 people and you say, right, who's interested in doing the exam, and you might have like one or two people that put their hands up. But whereas everyone else was there to be able to learn that particular technology or learn that particular bit of knowledge rather than the certification of it. So just run me through some of your stats, Mark.
Oh, okay. So in 9 days, so on the 23rd of December, it will be the 30th anniversary of my first MCP exam. So that was Windows NT 3.1. So that was back when there were no MCSEs or things like that. It was just basically you did an exam and you got the exam. And then if you wanted to do another exam, you could do another exam.
But that was with paper and pen, right? That was how you filled it out.
No, it was with rock. It was with different rocks of different hardness, and they gave me like a piece of wood, and I had to engrave the answers in there. But I still fondly remember one of the questions in that exam, which was basically asking me, you need to do the following. Which of the following operating systems would you choose? And one of the answers was Novell, NetWare. And it's like, well, I kind of know that's not the correct answer.
Yeah.
So distractors have been in there right from the beginning.
Particularly in a Microsoft exam.
Yeah. So, okay. So since then, like all up, I did a count for this, and it's 117 exams that I've passed. Now, a lot of those in hindsight were nonsense or filler exams. Or, when you've got an employer who funds exams, then you'll just do random exams that you think you've got a chance of passing.
Right. Gotcha.
Sometimes you don't pass them because the exam's not really on what you think it is.
Yep.
But over the last few years, though, that number hasn't really increased all that much because of renewal exams. So whereas before, now I think I've renewed AZ 104 like 3 or 4 times already, whereas previously there would have been an AZ 105, an AZ 106, an AZ 107.
Yeah.
So so that number is kind of like, if people are looking at going, wow, how did you get it that high? The reality is that I think a lot of people, when you start factoring in, like especially for MCTs or just people who like to collect certifications and exams, some of them, some people are going to get pretty big numbers if you include the renewal assessments.
Right.
Now, I think I'm at the point where I've only got 2. I'm back. I think I shared with you a couple of weeks ago that, I had a bunch of renewal assessments that I was just going to sit down in one day and get them done. Yep. And I did that. And now I've got another 2 sitting in my inbox that I need to deal with.
They've come and found you.
But just in terms of the actual certifications then, apparently 44 of the certifications are still active. I challenge that based on some of the names of the certifications. I'm looking at going, that really should not be an active certification any longer. But historical certifications is 30. I think that 30 should be a bit high. It should be stealing quite a bit from that 44.
Right.
So over the years, quite a few different exams on a lot of different technologies, and all Microsoft, and quite a few of those technologies no longer exist. But I guess the good thing is that it's like, and this is something that I'll always sort of share with people, is that it's almost like you have if you've done a lot of Microsoft certifications or exams, it's almost like you've got an unfair advantage when you go in and do exams for Microsoft, because you're faster to recognize any of the distractors, because some of them are just like these ridiculously old things that people who are taking the exam may not have any idea what that thing is. And they'll go, well, that could be a good answer. Whereas you or I would laugh at it and go, I don't remember the last time I used that tool. That was back in the, I'm sure that was something from a command line tool from the 90s. And it's still quite surprising whether it's that approach or just the breadth of exposure you've had to different things over the years means that it's easier for you to fill in the gaps when you go into exam questions, or you're not getting as caught up on a particular way that something is worded. You just look at it and you'll just process it at face value, thinking it's not worth spending 15 minutes trying to think of, trying to figure out how could I deliberately misinterpret this. So I guess probably the result of that is we tend to be able to do exams a lot faster. And I think the other thing that kind of, that sometimes people are a bit surprised by is how often if I share with them how little preparation I generally end up doing for an exam, because it completely goes against what I would recommend. But in most cases, because I want to do something while it's in beta, I've got one day each week where I've got the possibility to do online proctored exams. So it's like, okay, well, what day there can I squeeze in amongst other things to get done? And it's like, okay, this exam gets 2 or 4 hours of prep. That's it. Yeah. So getting good at focusing prep is, basically that's what I would say, trying to sort of steer people towards, focusing on what you need to. I think that's probably like one of the skills that I've been able to sort of build over the years.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head with the more that you do certainly as an instructor, the more that you do exams, because you're not approaching them from the perspective of I need these for a particular job, etc. You need to pass an exam to be able to do your well, you didn't do it to do your job, I guess, to be able to do the training, right?
Yeah.
But it's a different approach from I need the knowledge to be able to prove to my employer that I can go and deploy, whatever it might be, or construct like a successful Kubernetes, deployment or whatever. Instead, what we do is we approach it from the perspective of I need to get through this so that I can then stand in front of a room and espouse knowledge that comes from within a boundary of what the session is actually going to hold anyway.
Yeah.
So it is a different approach, and what it does do is it, like as you said, the more that you're doing it, the more you do get used to how things are said, what sort of things are said, and the other thing is that oftentimes across a particular topic or particular sort of like type of technology, you'll actually have the same, you won't know it, but you'll have the same exam writers in the back end. So they will have their same style. It all gets sort of normalized to an extent, but they'll have their same style, they'll have their same way of asking things, etc. Like I remember when I used to be involved in doing certification creation, like exam item creation, that's the thing. I used to, at least in one, because it was all like the Windows Server, Windows Client, that's the thing, a lot of the sort of deployment and management type things. I always used to throw in at least one question in my batch of questions that I was writing that the answer was wipe the machine and start again. So, and then
so you weren't the person writing the MX or TXT record is required for domain name verification.
That's
because that person seems to have been supplying that question in a few exams for a few years. It's my favorite question. It's like I'm greeting an old friend I haven't seen for a few months.
It's funny. I think I know who that person is, but no, that's not me. But yeah, my point is that sort of that as you start doing more of those exams, you do get that familiarity. It's like it does become a little bit like reading, reading a book series from your same, like from the same writer that you become more comfortable with, and that's the thing. I wanted to briefly, or I wanted to sort of to bring you into also have a chat about your website. I'm going to put a link in the chat for everyone for it. So your website, which you've got, that you do for certification prep and that sort of thing, and I find it very useful. I always hand it out to people. So, what's your process for that? Tell me a bit about how that started and what that's like, where it came from and where it is now.
Okay, so it started partly because it was something that, and it started off as something that grew out of the way that I would do my exam prep, which was I'd go through the exam objectives and then just sort of try to find some resources that I could sort of go back and dig into and for more detail about the areas that I wasn't really all that sure. And then I sort of realized that it wouldn't take too much more effort to convert that into something that I could publish, as long as I stripped out like my general comments and things like that, and just made it more of a, here's a topic, here's something, here's at the time it was still Microsoft Docs, and probably some of the older content, there's probably still references to TechNet in there, but yeah, obviously now everything is Learn. So I'd always be, making sure that it was pointing back to Microsoft content. Trying to avoid things like blog posts because they're static. It's a point. I always sort of try to position blog posts as it's someone's opinion at a point in time that may or may not be factual by the time you get to it. So referring people to the official documentation, and so in terms of then the what exams would I do it for? So really, it started off with the exams that I was most focused on. So what were the ones I needed to do? And it was really when the thing that drove this was that huge influx of new exams during the shift away from the not the AZ, the 70- exams over to the role-based exams. So there was a period, if I sort of go through and look at my cert history, or exam history, there was that period when like MS 100, MS 101, and because I also qualified, I obviously took MS 102, the same for the 3 MD exams, like AZ 100, 101, all of those got pushed out within a pretty short time frame. So it just sort of seemed like a perfect opportunity to start sharing the stuff that I was creating. And then it ended up initially creating more work than I was expecting, because people would be like, oh, there's the link's broken or things like that. But the good thing now is it seems that the links, Microsoft seems to do a pretty good job of keeping old links active with a redirect. So a lot of I was kind of scared when Microsoft was changing docs.microsoft.com to learn.microsoft.com, because I was thinking, oh, please don't let that break all of my links, because it could have been a perfect situation for them to sort of reset a bunch of stuff. But everything still seems to work. But when I get time, I do go through and start updating some of the URLs to be the current URLs. And especially if it's something where the process, like where I'd clean things up first, would be something where there's been a product rebrand that affects the name of the bullet point that I've got.
Yep.
So that would be, they'd be the ones that get the most attention. But moving forward, so it's only exams that I've taken that are in there. Even though there's scope for, like I'm sure I could sort of put things together for like AI 900, PL 900, because the fundamentals seem to drive a lot of traffic. But I think those ones, there tend to be a lot of guides out there already, whereas I try to sort of focus on the key areas that I focus on, even if it's just for for a certain point of time. So for a while, I had to focus on that. Yeah, one of the exams you said that's retiring, or that the content is retiring, MS 600. That was a course I had to teach a few times. So I thought, okay, if I'm teaching a course, generally, if it's a course that I know I'll be teaching more than once, and there's also stuff in it that I find interesting, then that would generally be what motivates me to do the exam guide. Yeah. So these days, it's more the list. The list has actually shrunk a little bit because MS 100 and 101 are now just 102. The same for MD. MS 500 is retired. So I think I'll go against what I was just saying, and I'll probably add AZ 900. And one of the ones that's been on the back burner for a while is AZ 305, the architect exam.
Right, gotcha.
Because they're the ones that I tend to get the most requests for.
Okay.
But I don't want to try to turn it into a universal resource, because that's not what it's supposed to be.
Yeah. The one of the things that I kind of that I find, I'm sure you've come across John Saville's video series before, so he does a video series presentation on a lot of the exams, and there seems to be a lot of little bit of crossover, because it's the Azure exams that he focuses on. So he has the same sort of thing, has a bit of a focus. But the thing that I like with using, say for instance, or referring students and that thing too, is your site and also his channel. And the reason is because your site is more focused. It means that, say for instance, if someone's going, I want to know a bit more about a particular topic, then they can just look for the topic, right, and go, what's the link for that? It's a nice, really quick, easy way to be able to just zap into it. Whereas, say for instance, if you watch if you've got someone who is completely fresh to something and they're wanting to have a sort of a whole soup to nuts, and they move sort of the Microsoft style, then I refer to them something like John Saville's sort of videos. But then with the backup of still being your site, because whenever someone is going through in a quick fashion a bunch of new topics, there will always be something that you go, okay, I need to dive into that a little bit more. There'll always be that the thing that, as I always used to, whenever I went in to do an exam, there was always whatever the exam was, I knew there was something when I was doing my study that I'd go, I really still don't get that, or there's this little bit here that I'm still not sure of. And so with your site, sort of being able to go through the list of topics and find that that's the thing that when I've been looking at, I don't really quite understand that. So I need some more info on that. Where can I go to that particular topic? So, so it's been like I find it a very sort of handy pre-site, post-site, and it would also as a backup for other methods as well to be able to come through. So
yeah, and I guess for me, like, so one of the other reasons why I put it together and why I've sort of made an effort to try to keep it as up to date as possible most of the time is that one of the things that I think like the wrap, or even if it's quarterly changes, if it's a major update to an exam, it means that like things like the idea of when someone asks me what book on that certification topic would I recommend, I can't recommend any books on stuff anymore because they're probably one update behind before the time they're even published.
Yeah.
And unless it's basically, that their author has committed to doing it as a subscription, where you're getting free updates to that book for X number for like 1 year or 2 years or something like that. And same thing with like that I found with a lot of video content. So for me, one of the issues that I've got is as soon as I see something in a video, for example, if I go to a live session and I see something that's referring to like an old product name or there's an old logo or something like that used, my brain just shuts down and says, if I can't trust that to be up to date, I can't trust anything else that's in this content. And that's just the way my brain works. And I know if I sat through that content or that presentation, I know I would get a ton of useful material out of it, but my brain just says, get out, cut your losses. So so for me, it's this approach where it's just jump in, be able to make quick changes, hopefully rearrange things as necessary. But it's and it's just different learning styles as well. So this is I think Glenn, our mutual friend Glenn has sort of called this kind of like a bite-sized learning approach where you can just jump in, look at the area of weaknesses, read a few docs articles, then go back to your day-to-day activities. Whereas a fully structured learning path is great when you need to learn a topic, but it's terrible when you already know 90% of that topic because your brain just shuts down as you skim through the content and you don't even realize you've missed the important changes that are in there. Whereas I'll always try to highlight the changes.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Now the other big benefit I think I've got with this approach, where I mostly use Microsoft Learn content, is now with open book exams.
Right. Yeah.
Hopefully people who use my site have got a better idea of, might have some recall of certain Learn content they saw that helps them answer certain questions.
But also because like that's a really good point, because you're actually sending them to Learn content, then it means they're actually used to what the format is within Learn and how to navigate that Learn environment as well. So, or the Learn content. So, it's a very good point.
Yeah, and especially when you get to certain topics. So if it's something like, let's say if it's something security or compliance related, there might be areas that it's covered well in the product documentation, but then there might also be pieces in the Microsoft security and compliance area, which is non-product specific, that's more solution oriented. So even just being aware of some of the different places in Learn, and I think that's one of the things that hopefully people do pick up from the content I provide.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. So shifting gears a little bit, because you also do run a user group here in Australia. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like how you kind of got into that? So
with this was something that it was actually driven by something that had sort of been floating around in my head for a while, but it was back before Microsoft ran that first round of Ignite World Tour series events. And because of one of the people who I knew would be down in Australia for that, I was thinking, let's try to organize something around his visit. And that's also someone I won't mention his name, but I'll just say Autopilot, and you'll know who it is. So I basically used that as
you could have said his name. It's fine.
Oh yeah. But it's, yeah, so I use that as the launch pad for this.
Right.
And then, and obviously, it's once you sort of get the motivation to start, it's easy to keep going. And initially it was all in person in Sydney, but then as COVID hit, obviously we had to turn into an online event. And as soon as we went online, that started opening us up to international audiences.
Okay.
Now, generally, we wouldn't get people from the US because we start off late in the day in Australia, which is beyond bedtime for most US people. But it means that across, basically from Australia going west until you hit, the UK kind of thing. Then that's where now we do get people basically joining from all over the place. So it's become more international, but now we run it as hybrid event. So we'll still meet in Sydney, and then but make sure that we're always in a venue that it's easy for us to connect the room up, etc., and get people in who are remote.
And so then, what's the focus of the group now?
Okay, so the group name is the Microsoft 365 Modern Management Meetup. Now, that's a bit of a mouthful because we could have just called it the Intune Meetup, because Intune and related technologies are the things we tend to focus on. But there's always that risk with Microsoft naming something after a product.
Right, yes.
There are times where you do that and times where you don't do that. Now, yes, I'm being hypocritical because my website is intunedin.net, but that branding was done for a very specific purpose at a particular point in time, and it served me very well. So that was a good decision. Whereas just sort of calling something a Microsoft name, could backfire a little bit. So just keeping it more, rather than being too product specific, like modern management. Now, the challenge that we have with the Microsoft 365 part of the name is people will say, do you talk about SharePoint or Teams or whatever? And it's like, no.
Not if we can help it.
So it's more of so here when we're talking about modern management, like we're working on the assumption that people know that means device, Microsoft's view of device management these days. Whereas we know that there are people out there who aren't associated that closely with Microsoft to know that that's what it means. So yes, but so we try not to venture too far out of that. The only time we'll sort of mention servers is if we're talking about migration away from that kind of thing. And and basically like all of the Office 365 stuff, the only elements of that we would cover would be things like if there are deployment changes to the M365 apps. But we're not going to talk about Teams or SharePoint or OneDrive or especially Exchange Online. Like that there are other user groups that cover that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so just to kind of to I guess wrap up through that topic, how do you, because I'm sure that there'll be folk who are listening, either either attending or who are listening, who are wanting to think, there would be good functions to be able to sort of branch this out. Like what would be your recommendation for someone who wanted to get started running a user group? What would be their approach? How?
Yeah. So probably the first thing that I do is just make sure that there's nothing in your immediate area that kind of covers that kind of thing already. And the reason is that there's as much as in some areas or for particular topics, there might be a huge demand for more user groups, but it can be a struggle to get people to, just like anything, getting people to attend after they register is that's a challenge that we have there. So what I would say is find out if there's anything else going on in your area, and maybe they have special chapters, maybe they're always looking for people to assist, and maybe it's just another type of topic that could be added to their agenda. So I'd say look at that first. So for me, part of it was reaching out to a person who used to run a similar group to this, but hadn't done anything with it for quite a while. So, and basically when he was running it, it was more config manager focused. So and because he hadn't officially declared that it had moved on, I thought it was probably a good idea to get him involved with this as well. And just to do, for him, it was a relaunch. I view it as something new and different because we didn't leverage anything that was done previously. And so then just sort of deciding, is it going to be in person? Is it going to be online? If it's in person, making sure you've got a venue that you've got the ability to let people in and out of the building easily if you're doing it after hours. There's, the logistics of in-person get complicated when it's outside of business hours. Whereas if it's online, that's easy, and online means that you've got a broader audience to that you could reach as well.
Okay. All right, well, perfect. Thank you very much, Mark. Really appreciate your time.
Okay, no problem. Thanks for inviting me.
That's all right, no problems at all. The let me see if I can PowerPoint to reshare. Last time I did this, it went crazy. So let's go. And look at that. We've actually got it right. So I did a quick hack of my content. So thank you very much, Mark. Really appreciate your time. Hopefully that's of use for some of the folk that are attending or that are listening afterwards. If you are interested in starting up a user group, use some of those steps and some of the recommendations that Mark's put in place. It's a good way to be able to spread out to the community a little bit further than what we do simply in the classroom. Be able to spread out further. And if you have any aspirations or designs of becoming an MVP, it's a really good sort of stepping stone into that direction as well. All right, so moving on then to this month's recognition. So milestones. So some of the instructor recognition. So we have just a bit of a milestone as such that came out that since the beginning of November, we've issued out 1,401 badges that were issued to 988 instructors. So it's been, a pretty busy month across November. Some of the ones that the sort of the highlights and that sort of thing that are in there. So 276 instructors taught their first class for the month, and first class last month, not first class for the month. First class for the first class on our platform. Now, some of those would have been the first time they've actually delivered a class as well, and I think, as we all know, that is a pretty hectic time, right? When the first time you do a presentation, it's first time you walk into a class and the class is yours. I think no matter how much confidence you have in yourself, there's always going to be a bit of self-doubt within there. So that's awesome though. So congratulations to them. Bethany Wood. So Beth Wood reached last month, reached 6,000 students. So that's one of our pretty hefty milestones. So congratulations to Bethany. And then we had Eric, John, and Matthew all reached the 250 classroom. 250 classes delivered. So that's a pretty another pretty good sort of step up. So along with these instructors, like the badges that we're presenting in here that we're talking about, obviously across the the 1,400 badges that we delivered out, they're ones that you can display. You can put them into your LinkedIn profiles and that sort of thing to be able to display, just to kind of show what it is that you're doing and what you've done. And then we have Piyush, who reached 500 students. So really big congratulations to Piyush. Now, I was led to believe that he might be here, and if so, then I'm guessing that's probably our our cyber trainer. Is that because we've got one person registered as that under that name? Is that you, Piyush? Is that, if it is, come off mute, say hello. And if it's not, that's fine. That's fine as well. So, all right. So, so congratulations anyway for reaching that milestone. So, and we'll do this as we mentioned last month. We'll sort of do this on a semi-regular basis to recognise more publicly our instructors who operate through our platform. We do really appreciate you, and certainly major congratulations for any of those badges, and that's something that you would be attracting. All right, little bit of a wrap up then for our instructor offers. As usual, just to bear in mind that you do have free access to prep for classes and also to expand your knowledge and that sort of thing. To be able to do, essentially, you have access to the Microsoft official content labs as well as the community courseware labs as well. You can leverage off those to be able to do your own prep, etc. Plus, obviously, when you're in a classroom as an instructor, you get access to those as well. You do also have access to our MCT All Access Pass for the Challenge Lab, so you can run through those. Now, some of those you see come across into the Microsoft content, but it's also a really good way to be able to maybe stretch out and branch out into other content and other technologies as well. And we also have the same thing for our AWS instructors as well. We have an AWS Instructor All Pass, which also All Access Pass, which gives them access to all of the AWS, all of the Challenge Lab content as well. To get into any of these and to sign up for any of these, you do need to actually put some action in place. So skillable.com/offers, and if you go into there, you'll be able to then sign up for any of the mock lab access plus the MCT access pass as well. So you do make sure you leverage any of that content as well. To feel free to use it, recommend it, etc. Mention it to any of the other trainers that you know as well. A lot of these things sort of get lost over time, and then there's a discussion. There'll be a discussion of, oh, hey, you can sign up for this. It's like, oh, really? How long's that been there? That must be only new. It's like, no, actually, we've been doing that for years now. But it's just sort of get lost in the mists of time. So just the things to bookmark if you do, bookmark out the skillable.com/instructor recognition page. So that's where you can go to see all your badges, as well as then the dashboard. The dashboard is where you can see in one spot everything that you're doing, that you're doing, we do also have a Slack channel, so please feel free to join that. And of course, if you do have any feedback for us, if there's anything that you think, hey, this could be done better, this could be changed, etc., please feel free to put it through to the feedback.skillable.com. If you're interested in what happens to that feedback, go back maybe 2 episodes ago, I think, where we did discuss sort of what happens to your feedback and how that gets processed and included and that sort of thing. So so while you may not necessarily see something change immediately, but you will hopefully see that come into effect at some point. All right, finally, then, just a reminder for our how to stay in touch with us and how to connect through our various different social media environments. Otherwise, thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you for listening. For those that are listening online or listening as part of the recording, thank you very much. I'll see you next year, I should say. Crikey, it's almost there. All right. Thank you very much for your attendance. Appreciate it.